When people think about the fall of Rome, they imagine barbarians at the gates, collapsing legions, or emperors poisoned in marble palaces. But empires don't just crumble from outside attacks, they rot from within. And one of the most corrosive forces is always money. Rome didn't just fall because of invasions or corruption, it fell because its currency collapsed. The lessons from that collapse still apply to every modern economy that thinks it can play games with money and get away with it. Setting the stage, the silver denarius. For centuries, Rome's economic backbone was the silver denarius. First minted around 211 BC, it was nearly pure silver and trusted across the empire and beyond. Roman soldiers were paid in it, merchants demanded it, and ordinary people stored their wealth in it. The denarius wasn't just money, it was confidence in metal form. The empire's power and the coin's value were linked. As long as people believed in Rome, they believed in its money. But running an empire is expensive. Legions had to be paid, roads and aqueducts built, and wars financed. By the 2nd century AD, Rome was stretched thin, defending borders against Germanic tribes, Parthians in the east, and internal unrest. Tax revenues could not keep pace with military costs, so emperors turned to an age-old trick: debasement. The numbers of decline. Instead of raising taxes, which is always unpopular, they reduced the silver content in the denarius. The numbers tell the story. Augustus, the dawn of empire. The denarius contained about 95% silver. Caracalla, early 3rd century. It dropped to around 50%. Gallienus, mid-3rd century. The denarius contained less than 5% silver. A coin once made of solid metal had become a disc of bronze coated with a thin silver wash. The people could see and feel the difference. Inflation followed. Prices rose because money was no longer anchored to real value. A measure of wheat that once cost a single denarius suddenly cost dozens. The vicious cycle. This was not abstract theory. It destroyed the lives of ordinary Romans. Soldiers demanded higher pay to cover rising costs. Merchants stopped accepting debased coins, preferring barter or gold. Local economies reverted to direct trade because the currency was no longer trusted. The more confidence eroded, the more emperors struck cheaper coins, hoping volume would replace value. This crisis peaked during the crisis of the 3rd century, 235 to 284 AD. Rome suffered 50 years of chaos, invasions, plagues, and civil wars. Behind the political drama was a broken financial system. Farmers abandoned their lands rather than pay taxes in worthless coin. Trade networks fractured, and the government tried desperate measures, from price controls to forced labor. The failed fix. Diocletian's edict. In 301 AD, Emperor Diocletian tried to stop the bleeding with the Edict on Maximum Prices, fixing the cost of over 1,000 goods and services. Violators faced death. It was a disaster. Prices cannot be controlled by decree when the money itself is worthless. The black market exploded, and official trade collapsed. People learned quickly that the law couldn't make a broken coin whole. Eventually, Constantine the Great introduced the solidus, a gold coin of consistent purity, around 312 AD. It restored some stability to the East, but the Western Empire was already fatally weakened. The debasement of the denarius had hollowed out Rome's economic core. The fall of Rome was a long unraveling, and currency collapse was its sharpest thread. What does this mean for us today? The destruction of money is always the destruction of empires. Rome thought it could trick its people with coins that looked the same but held less value. Modern governments think they can do the same by printing paper, manipulating interest rates, or inflating away debt. The outcome is always the same. The people pay the price, wealth is destroyed, and trust evaporates. Historical echoes. History didn't stop teaching after Rome. Every major inflationary crisis has repeated this pattern. Weimar Germany, 1923. Facing crushing debts after World War I, the government printed marks. By 1923, a loaf of bread cost 200 billion marks. People carried wages in wheelbarrows, and life savings evaporated, fueling the extremism that led to Hitler's rise. Zimbabwe, 2000s. Faced with falling production and rising debt, the government turned to the printing press. In 2008, inflation hit a mind-bending 89.7 sextillion%. The currency was eventually abandoned entirely. The modern fiat era. You don't have to look at extremes to see the pattern. In 1971, the U.S. took the dollar off the gold standard, turning it into fiat money, backed only by government trust. Since then, the temptation to spend beyond means has become irresistible. Debt has ballooned, and while we don't use wheelbarrows of cash, the dollar's purchasing power has eroded steadily. A 1971 dollar now requires more than $6.